Hello, my name is Dawn McCarty, and I am an associate producer with the Racing Family. And tonight I am with my co-host, Alyse Price-Tobler. Alyse, could you introduce yourself briefly to our viewers?
Yeah, hi everybody. My name's Alyse Price-Tobler. I'm over in Sydney, Australia, and we are going to be interviewing Caio Penatti tonight, who's also an adult child of parental alienation. So that'll mean all three of us are. We have this big thread in common. So I'm a clinical psychotherapist currently studying a PhD, and I work with adult children during the day in my practice. So this is pretty exciting for me to actually have an interview with a very, very brave person coming through who's going to give us a lot of insight into what it's like to be an adult child of divorce and separation. So welcome, Caio, to our channel.
Yes, welcome, and thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for having me here. It's great to be here, and it's great to talk about it.
So do you want to briefly give us, tell us a little bit about you and your life and whatever you'd like to share with us before we get started?
Yes. So I am an adult child of alienation. Recently found out what parental alienation is. And my story begins when I was very young. I was actually 6 months old, as the story goes. It's funny because I've always had to believe in something about my story, right? I never knew my story. I just had to pick up pieces and bits and figure out what's what.
Yeah.
And that could take decades. But yeah, here we are.
We agree.
Yeah.
We
so
do the same thing.
Yeah. So basically, I started being alienated around this age, 6 months to a year or so. So by the age of 3, I was already calling my grandma mom, as she liked me to call her, and she was telling me to call my actual mom by her name, or or mother and then her name, right? So
okay,
yeah.
so your grandmother was the alienator in this case.
Yes, that's correct.
Wow.
Yeah, and she alienated me from my mother. My grandma was from my dad's side. Alienated me against my mother, telling me all sorts of things about who my mother was and how she never cared and all of that. And my mother was young too. I wouldn't say I'm a child of divorce because there was never a marriage in the first place.
Yeah.
I'm just
a child of separation.
Yeah.
There's plenty.
Yep.
Dawn's the same.
Yeah. I mean, my parents were very young. My dad was 20. My mother was 16. So it is what it is. I'm here.
Yeah.
But so that's my story. Basically, I got reunited with my mother. I was 16 because I decided to move to the country where she was, because things at my grandmother's weren't fine anymore, and I decided to give the leap of faith and move to a different country to get to meet my mom.
Wow. That's pretty brave in itself too, because it's so unknown.
Yeah. Back then I was just believing. I've always believed that she loved me. I've always believed she's always showed to be around. It was just very bad what my grandma was doing against her. And after she immigrated to Canada, I was very young, and I stayed in Brazil. There was a custody battle. I was manipulated by my grandma to just say, "Oh, why would you change everything?" Obviously, it was way more violent than just manipulation. It was purely hitting and putting my father against me, her son, right, manipulating him as well and getting him to beat me up and stuff like that. So so I grew up like that. 16, I decided to just, leave Brazil. I can't do this anymore. And decided to come to Canada and, lived with my mother for 3 years. It was, that phase of getting to know who she is. She got to know who I was, and getting to know how each other really, is. And there was a lot of fighting, a lot of, my trauma, her trauma. Nobody knew what to do.
Yeah.
Because I would say those horrible things, and but we were living together. So finally, I left home. I was around 19, so 3 years after 3 years living with my mother, I left home. And then after that, and through failed relationships with people, I'm trying to understand, why am I so triggered? Why do these things happen and whatnot? I realized that, something about my relationship with my mom was messed up. Because why would I say all those horrible things about my mother, but, you live with her and all that. And anyways, so basically, people like my past relationships showed me that, something was wrong. And I started taking the root of the problem as I was I somewhat didn't know what love was, and I needed to, find out. I somehow I was broken inside, and I knew that I had to fix that about my mom in order to be successful at relationships, if that makes any sense.
Yep.
Thanks. Can you just explain that to us a little bit about that little bit there, Ko? Because that's interesting. So you felt like you had to do work with your mum. Is that what you were saying? Get
Yes,
support from your mum?
I had to forgive my mother.
Okay.
I had to
You had to forgive your mother. Yeah.
Yeah, and I had to feel that in order to treat like my partner as well, pretty much. Because like the way you treat your mother is the way, most likely, the guidelines for the way you're going to treat your partners.
Sure, yeah, there can be truth in that. So you'd been told all these terrible things, so that was very embedded in you from a very, very young age. So that's what the struggle was, that enmeshment and that the terrible lies that we get told. And then when we're meeting up with the person, we've still got all of these shadow stories still with us, and we've got to figure out what's the truth, what's not the truth. And then there's the person there, and that is a very, very, very hard space to step into, and we understand that, and we just want to support you in that part of your story. It's very difficult.
And that is interesting too, because we get to that point where we just have this knowing, this instinct, this something that's inside us that's telling us there's something that I'm needing still. So it's really interesting that, the more people that we talk to, we're discovering that same thing. We just have this knowledge, this instinct again to seek it out, and we have to. I call it a undying thirst. If we don't know it, we constantly seek for it. So it was really interesting to hear that come from you as well. So we've established that you were about 6 months when your parents more or less split up because they weren't married. Yeah. And that you were, you probably had a decent relationship with both parents while they were still together. Probably. I mean, 6 months old, it's hard to tell, but more than likely. And you probably weren't old enough to really articulate how it felt when they split up because of the age that you were. Yeah. So did you ever, so your mom left at the age of 6 months?
No. So basically, my mother was 16, my father was 20. They were living together, but their families didn't like their relationship.
Yeah, okay.
And they split up, and apparently I used to live with my mom, and then my dad would want to see me, but I would go to my grandma's, and then you know, because my grandma's was more structured, I just ended up staying there. But
Yeah, okay. So she decided she was the best parent out of the lot of them, did she?
yeah,
Okay, and then took control of the situation and you ended up with her.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Were you close with your grandmother as you know, the young Caio, or were you close with her? Did you understand or know what was going on?
No, I didn't get what was going on ever. I was
Yeah.
just, I was, you know, after she raised 4 kids, my dad included, it was just me, right? So all the attention, all the monopoly, everything was on me.
But at some point, she started using certain tactics, maybe to, like you mentioned earlier, that she wanted you to call her mom, and then to refer to your real mom as mom, whatever her
Oh,
name.
right. Right. I never got it. I never got it. I never got it. It was funny because I always used to ask myself, why do I have 2 moms? And I remember she used to tell me she was 37. And then one day I asked, I don't know who, and they told me she's 52. And then I go like, what? So when I went back to tell her, oh, you're 52, actually, you're not 37, like you've been telling me for 5 years. You haven't like skipped, like what's going on? Are you skipping getting old or something? So she got super mad when I found out her age. Oh my gosh, she almost beat me up. How did you find out my age? Who had the big mouth, whatever. So yeah, it was a big fight when like I was realizing that she wasn't my real mother. And in school, like she was paying for my school, and whenever my mom used to visit me at school, she would be like, no, you're not her mom, like we know who Kyle's mom is, you
Okay,
know.
so your mum used to come to the school to see you, your
Yeah,
birth mum?
yeah, oh,
Okay. That
yeah.
must have been a crazy space for her, like
Oh
with
my
this
god.
thinking that
Oh
your
my
grandmother was your mum and she's turning up going, I'm his mum.
Imagine,
Yeah.
yeah, imagine the day I went up to her and I called her, like, her name is Ivy. I used to say, Mom Ivy. Hello, Mom Ivy. How are you? Oh, why do you call me Mom Ivy? Oh, because, you know, I have Mom and Mom Ivy. I cannot imagine for a girl that was probably 17, 18 years old to hear that coming from her child. In a
Yeah.
situation that was already so messed up in itself and then after that she goes through this.
When you're
Oh,
a
it
child and you're
sounds
not really understanding that the relationship that you really have with her, you don't even realize what that is probably at that age.
Yeah, no, I wasn't realizing a lot of things, and I knew that there
very,
was something wrong in fishing
yeah,
and all that.
very confusing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Terrible space to put a child in, Caio. Terrible.
Yeah.
Really painful too, and that's not what you want to be going through at that age, is it? You want to be just hanging out with your friends in the schoolyard and playing and talking about cars and whatever else, just nothing, none of that other messy adult stuff.
I know.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit about the way your grandmother had reacted, and it sounded like you said that she didn't really care for your mom, and that neither side of the family really cared for the other.
Yeah.
Was there any type of did you ever sense any notion of fear, or did you see anybody else have any fear? Like, was your mother ever in fear of being around that situation that you know of?
Yes, yes. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. My mother didn't like it. My mother didn't like it. My dad didn't like it. My grandma, nobody would meet each other at all. It was just,
Wow. So there was no dialogue going on, no communication, no what's in the best interest of Caio. Let's all get together on the same page. It was just all a big sort of weird, silent competition going on. And
yeah.
your grandmother was pulling all the strings.
Yeah.
So you lived
We
with your
see
grandmother
this.
mostly? Sorry, Alyse, I didn't mean to jump in there or jump
Yeah,
over.
we see this. We see this dynamic. a fair bit with grandmothers who've got abandonment wounds themselves, who've had their children growing up, and most of them may or may not have been in enmeshment with the grandmother, and then the children grow up and leave, so she's grabbing onto the next one who comes her way, and sometimes that can be the grandchild. So, and it seems to me that you were being used to calm her, regulate her, plug that hole of trauma or abandonment or whatever it was that she had. Do you know what had happened to her, Caio, that she actually was using you for that plug?
Well, she always used to say how her mom abandoned her.
Right.
And yeah, so that is it. But she's very like, oh, I loved my childhood. Oh, I loved, everything about it. No, I went through some struggle, but that's okay. Meanwhile, and she had 4 kids, all 4 kids. 2 now decided to distance themselves from her, and my dad included, and one of his sisters. The other one already lives in another city. So everybody distanced themselves from my grandma. Everyone. She's now 70 or so, and everyone left.
Was that when you were younger, or is that here recently?
This is now. Back then, everybody was in their 20s, right? So, like everyone, actually, my dad was the oldest one, and he was 20. So everyone was a teenager, right, when I was born. So to this day, I actually grew up with a bunch of and then my grandpa, when I talk to him nowadays, I'm very close to him, by the way. When I talk to him nowadays, he's like, honestly, those are all lies. Like, there's nothing that's truthful. And I believe him because my grandma, I just think that she's straight up narcissistic, right?
Okay.
Or, she just
So
is stubborn.
your grandmother made a big campaign towards your grandfather, got rid of him because something had happened there. Did he leave her, or was her abandonment triggered at that point? What happened?
At this point, I don't even know, because while I still talk to my grandpa, if I go down to those subjects, I don't know how he would react.
Yep, fair enough. That's fine. And you may never ever want to speak about them, but just out of interest, there's usually a pattern. Somebody's abandoned the person who's got abandonment trauma from childhood, and then that sort of tips them over into being an alienator and grabbing hold of whoever's going to come in and let them do it to them. And in this
She
case,
moved
it
to a
was
different
you.
city. She moved to a different city with 4 kids, raised them all.
Gosh. So
Yeah.
she actually took the children to a different city away from their father. So they grew up without a father as well.
Pretty much.
Wow.
But, he was always around. But their relationship nowadays is broken.
Mm.
Yeah, terrible patterns. But I'm really, really happy that you're actually here talking about them. So in relationships that you have in your life, you don't repeat the patterns. And that's how we're going to stop this parental alienation, by realizing what the patterns are, how to get help for the people who are really, really hurt with abandonment, so that they're not doing these behaviors and interrupting people's entire lives, like what has happened to you. And your bravery of standing in this space and talking to young people about this, and just what it's been like for you, because this can run down generationally to the next generation, the next one. And those of us who've been alienated are at threat of alienating again. So we have to be aware of those patterns. Mm-hmm. So I think you're really brave.
Yeah. And you said that you had just recently figured out the term, because a lot of us, we knew what happened to us, but we didn't know what it was called. So
Yeah.
you recently found out what parental alienation was. And but before that, did your mom ever have opportunity to see you during that time that she was not living or not able to see you? Did she try to reach out?
Up until 6, I would see her once a month, maybe.
Was that your grandmother's choice, or was that
My grandma's choice? Oh yeah, big
her
time.
choice?
Big time, my grandma's choice. Maybe once a no, longer than that. Longer than that. Yeah, I was like 5, 6. I used to see her like once every 2 months, maybe. And then my mom would tell me to ask my grandma, like, yo, get me once every 2 weeks. So then I started going once every 2 weeks when I was from like 5 to 7. 5 to 7, yeah. And then she went to 5 to 9 or so. Yeah, like I was seeing her every couple weeks, whatever. And that was fine. That was really nice, because I got to actually spend my childhood with my mom a little.
So some fond memories there, possibly.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, great memories there.
Bonding.
Yeah, but still, I was seeing my mom and not really knowing what to do. So I grew up really messed up. So then when I was 9, she left. She went to Canada. I didn't understand that either, so I just took that as abandonment.
Yeah, she's leaving me. I don't matter.
Yeah.
If she loved me more, she'd stay here and fight for me. Are these some of the sentences that went through your head?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, welcome to the club. It's a terrible club to be in. Terrible. Really, really painful.
Yeah.
So where was your dad in all this? Was he still able to be around you while your grandmother had more or less claimed primary parent or the better parent? Where was your dad?
At one point, I was sharing those weeks with my dad. So one weekend was at my dad's, the other weekend was at my mom's, and the whole time was at grandma's. So my dad was going, he was having lunch at my grandma's. Sometimes he would have dinner. So I grew up with my dad very close, and my mom sometimes close, and my grandma just on top of me.
Direct.
Making sure that you were everything she needed you to be or wanted you to be.
Oh yeah.
What happened if you weren't Caio? What happened if happened if you didn't agree with her?
Oh, just madness and insanity.
Yeah.
That's it. Nothing good. Basically threatening me, actually beating me up, putting me down, putting other people down in front of me. Whatever it is.
Yeah, okay.
Whatever it is.
That's all domestic violence. All of that, just for anybody who'll be watching this. That's all different areas in domestic violence, and they say that children of parental alienation are exposed to domestic violence, and what you just said there is an example of it.
Yeah.
I'm really sorry.
Yeah. So did you ever feel like you wanted to discuss these feelings or confusion with either one of your parents, and not including your grandmother, like your mom and your dad?
My dad I tried talking to my dad, but my dad was just as alienated as I was, and
Yeah.
we still to this day is difficult to communicate about how we feel about this, because he's just so into it and I'm into it too. So I told him, I'm like, look, 2 months ago, I'm like, Dad, because he's been having issues with her now, like very bad issues, because he went back to her place to live. So he lived there for like a year, and that was really bad. So he had his issues, and I'm like, listen, I have a syndrome. It was like, what do you mean you have a syndrome? Because she also taught us, you know, you guys don't have anything. You don't need to go to the psychologist. You don't need any of this. Just go to church. Go to church. So she also prohibited us to get mental health. You know, it's ridiculous what she does. But anyways, yeah, basically she would call anybody that goes to the psychologist a crazy person. And she was perfect because she went to church. But yeah. So then my dad was very difficult to communicate with him. And my mom was just too far. And I wouldn't open up. Like I'm a private person about my own shame and my own feelings and all that. And also, like, I barely speak with her. Why would I speak of those things? Yeah, so basically I never said anything until, you know, there was a custody battle as well. I was 10, 11 more or less, and my mother wanted to take me to Canada, and I was in Brazil, and I told this to my grandma. My grandma goes like, nope, no, you're not going, not going. And then I didn't go. There was a court day, and you know, my grandma just brought a bunch of, my grandma's a lawyer too, by the way, so she just brought a bunch of
So she
memoirs
went
and
through the
stuff.
court system.
Yes, so she won the case. Like, my dad got the custody, and yeah, I just told my mom, like, I want to stay in Brazil, I don't want to go with you. So she came, she had a kid with someone, and then I kind of had that against, you know, now my brother, and I really love my brother now. I don't have any problems. But back then I'm like, wow, you know, like, he just left and had another kid. Cool. So yeah, pretty much I felt those things. I wouldn't tell anybody those things to this day. Like, this is probably the first time I'm telling anyone this about my brother. And
So he's younger than you, correct?
he's 10 years younger than me.
Okay.
He's, you know, he's still a child. There's no reason to, you know, feel anything negative towards him. But yeah, pretty much, there was this court day, and then my grandma brought a bunch of memoirs. She won. And then when I was 13, I dove really deep into church, the church that she went to. So I got really into religion and all that. And then a year later, I think I committed a sin and whatever, left church. Once I left church, my Lord, I was just a bad person in her ranks, right? So once I realized that I was a bad person in her ranks, but she is the ultimate voice of the world, like, what did I do? I left church, like, just because I study history a little more and I'm not giving a lot of money to them. That was a Protestant church, and it's a Protestant church in Brazil. Like, it is a known church for, like, you know, scamming people. Anyways, I basically left church, and I'm like, why are you yelling at me right now because I left church, and why do you treat me differently because I left church? So I started rebelling. I was like 13, 14. So then as I was rebelling, she started punishing me heavier. And I was already like, she's already slapping me across the face. She's already, you know, locked up the door for me. You know, I had to sleep in the stairwell down in the building, or whatever. So yeah, like, besides the mental abuse every day. So I started retaliating badly. And I still feel good. I still feel good about it, which is crazy, but I started retaliating. I think she started paying me an English course back home, and it was like, it's probably like $150 if you convert it, like $150, $200 a month. And I pretended like I went for a whole entire season, and I didn't. And I just never told her that I wasn't going, and she spent all that money, and I feel good about that. But anyways, that was how I was retaliating, right? So then at one point, she's like, I don't want you here anymore. You gotta go. So then I went to my girlfriend's for a week. Went to my girlfriend's for a week. My girlfriend back then, my ex now. Went there for a week. She goes, I want you back. Please come. Go back. Whatever. And then one day I'm like, you know what? I'm going to see my mom. Because it's been 3 years since the custody battle. She's trying to get me to Canada every one of those years. And all you guys do is delay the papers. You guys delay your signature so the document expires, so it can't be submitted.
So you're coming to realize you're piecing things together at this point?
Yeah. I'm like, what, 12, 13, I'm already like, this smells so fishy. But whatever, I love them. And then 13, 14, I'm like, okay, they're treating me bad because of all this. Now something's
So they're
really wrong.
retaliating against you and to begin with. Which
so I got fed up.
Retaliate.
Yeah, I got fed up about what my grandma was doing to me, and I just decided to leave her. I really did, and I knew that was gonna be difficult. I didn't understand how difficult that could have been, but I knew it wasn't gonna be easy. But I came to visit mom in Canada, and I loved it. And I'm like, I want to stay there. Whatever. Like, once I said I want to stay there, it was living hell came through my life that year. I was 16 to 17, and honestly, I lived through hell. If there is one year.
Was that hell coming from your grandmother because she wanted you back in her enmeshment?
Yes, and
and was that what was going on with the church? That because you weren't agreeing to what she wanted you to do, she then was withdrawing love and attacking you? Yeah, so that's the love bombing stuff. So as long as you're doing what she wants you to do, everything is kind of okay, but as soon as you start to show any autonomy or have a voice or step out and be your own person, all hell is going to break loose. And then for you to go overseas and actually say you don't want to go back and you want to live there with your mum, that must have caused so much trouble within your grandmother. Yeah, wow. So that space is extremely difficult, because did you feel like part of you was, like brainwashed into doing or hearing what your grandmother wanted you to say? You knew that there'd be punishment if you didn't, yet you're trying to kind of break out of that space and have your own voice, be your own person, and get away from that control?
Honestly, I knew my mom wouldn't let me down.
Okay.
I knew it. I knew I had a house with her. I've always done. So, yeah. And I also knew that my dad always loved me a lot. So if anything, he's gonna start raising me. I don't care. So it was more like my grandma was the absolute power in my life, until I was a teenager. And after I started realizing that it was an absolutist rule of hers, I just started not caring anymore, and I started doing those things, and I started rebelling, started drinking a lot, started smoking and whatnot, doing every sort of thing to get her pissed, just to get her to like regret raising me, kind of situation, because she started retracting love and all that. I'm a Scorpio with a Cancer rising star, like I am double water. Okay, I need that emotion, and then she retracts that. I just retaliate. That's me. So then I just left Brazil. I was called a traitor. I was called every single name. She started having palpitations in her heart, and it was my fault, and all that drama, whatever.
Gosh. Okay. So she really tried it on to keep you in there, pulled out every single card she could think of, including physical health cards.
Oh yeah.
So did you get to a point where you felt such relief once you finally felt like you were free? Did you ever reach that feeling? And what did that, can you describe that?
It's the feeling of you're breathing better. You're like, finally, something is still wrong, but finally now I can do whatever. The problem about that feeling is I lost my ground and I didn't know who to trust.
Yeah.
It comes
Yeah.
with that,
Yeah.
right?
The territory, yep.
It comes with that. So coming to Canada, I was a lone wolf on my own. I wasn't sharing anything with anybody. Yes, I'm moody all the time, but that's just who I am. And you know, I own my own church because I was raised as an only child by my grandma. So that was my
So these are some of those lingering long-term effects, is what I call them, that kind of is a result of, and you have to, you have to figure out that they exist and what they are, and then you have to figure out how to deal with them, and then you have to figure out I'm free and I'm with my mom, but then that relationship has been jeopardized. So then you know you're in a place where who can I trust at this point? Because you can't trust anything from your past at that point in this venture or journey.
yeah,
So
because I stopped trusting everyone from the get-go when she told me don't trust anyone but me. And then once she's out of the equation, who's left, right? If my mom is an idiot, my dad is an idiot, the whole world is an idiot but you, what am I going to trust right now?
yeah, oh, that's a hard one to wrap your head around at times, especially when you're first finding out what happened.
Yeah.
So you reunited with your mom and you lived with her for several years. Do you see your dad now? Do you ever get a chance to talk to him? Or
I haven't seen my dad in 4-5 years.
Trained when you talk to him?
The good thing about my dad is that he talks to me every day. He's the one that talks to me every day. You know, he's always done it ever since I left. Every morning, it could, you know, there could be an earthquake outside. I'm still gonna see a text from him. At the same time, he wakes up at 5 a.m. their time. I don't even know what time zone there is. I know it's 4 hours more than Pacific time. Oh my God. It's like 1 a.m. and then my dad, good morning. Every day, no matter what.
Become a constant.
Yeah. And no matter what, every day. And sometimes I wouldn't speak with him for a week. And he would still send it every day. And then he would be like, you don't talk to me anymore. What's going on? Da, da, da. But every single day. You know, that's what he did. And honestly, I thank him for doing that. Because if it wasn't that, I don't know. But he always showed himself very present.
And nice. What did that do for you, for your abandonment and your healing? Because we've got a lot of parents who have been alienated out there, whose children aren't speaking to them or not allowed to speak to them or too scared to speak to them because they have alienators in their lives like you and we all had. So those children who are too scared to kind of step forward, but we've got targeted parents, we suggest to them, keep sending cards, keep sending presents, keep open phone numbers that are known so that the children can come back in and speak to you when and if they're ready. Keep telling them that we love you, you're okay, we're here whenever you need them. That's what worked for me, because when they were hiding the mail from me, from the cards that were coming through and stuff from my dad's side, I knew that he still was thinking about me, he was still caring about me. What would you say to those kids out there who might be watching this?
I would tell them, to the parents, I would tell them, don't stop. And it might take years for you to hear back, but don't stop just talking to us every day. You know.
What does that do? What did that do for you when that was, like, when your dad's doing that, what is that telling you?
Well, that reminds. I mean, my language of love is acts of service, right?
Okay.
So him taking the time every morning to think of me was enough to tell me, okay, this guy loves me, right?
Yeah.
And even though a lot of times I took that for granted, that over time, just, it solidifies something in me that can't be taken away, just for what it is. Him talking every day, taking his time to even take crap from me, whatever. But still, every morning, the guy's there. Good morning. I hope your day is well. God bless you. Boom. That's it.
So no matter how you were presenting, your dad just stayed totally stable for you. He just kept sending the messages of love.
Yeah.
And it didn't matter what was happening in your life, you're still getting them. And that's really planted a seed about that he's there and he loves you. And it's
yeah. I think my luck was that he was always supplying that to me. My paternal figure is very strong. Like, he was always supplying that love to me, no matter what. He was alienated himself, and he was still, every day he's like, it's me and you. I'm his only child too. After me, he decided not to have anyone, so I'm his only responsibility in this life besides his girlfriend. So for coming from him every day, that really, really was that rock that really made me always be okay. Otherwise, knowing me, I would have gone way worse if it wasn't that. And honestly, I don't even believe that I would be here talking to you guys right now if it wasn't for my father being around the way he was. Because because my relationship, my maternal love was really messed up. What really pulled me together, because I'm very emotional.
Yes.
I'm just an emotional person. Like, I'm an emotional guy. I'll cry over anything, right? So it was just his love. His love was around. That was enough to, just get me there.
How about with your mom? Do you have any kind of connection with her?
Yes, very strong now, because after I lived on my own from 19 to 22, I went back, 19 to 23, I went back to her place. And I went back a changed man, because, from 19 to 23, I had the opportunity to actually, invite my mother in for, instead of living with her, sharing her space, invite my mom whenever you want. Right? So it's like, I miss you. It's not like, oh, I am, no, I miss you. Please come over. And I'm her only contact in Toronto also. So I'm her only family in Toronto. So
you've been able to build a relationship with her as well. So basically, you've more or less reunited with both of your parents.
Yes.
And so what does that mean to you? And what would you tell other kids out there like us about that feeling and how important it is to consider that?
It's great, but it's still not everything. It's amazing. Honestly, it's amazing to have, to be lucky enough to, be okay with both your parents. Still, it's not enough to make me feel
Whole.
Yeah, it's just one part of the big thing. I think that it for what it is, it's amazing, but it's not the end of it, right? There's a lot more that comes. Right now, I'm facing the struggles of, just now dealing with the consequences of trying to figure myself out, because now I'm a 20-year-old man and I have to refine myself and refine everything that I've learned, and on my own or with the help of my parents, whatever. But it just feels like life is starting back again. But also, as you go on, you see every day what happened to you shows in your attitude, or in what you do, or your habits, or this and that. And then you see those things, and then you're reminded of that every day. that's how I felt after I got well with my parents. I'm like, I'm still being reminded every day of this thing. It's lingering, and it's
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yep,
and for us, it doesn't go away. Sorry, Alyse, go ahead.
Yeah, I totally hear you. It's the same for all of us. And if you were to change everything, like wake up tomorrow and say you're a 6-month-old baby and your parents had separated, what would you want changed? What would you have want them to have like changed?
That's the thing, though. I don't think that I would want anything changed, just because I'm like that, right? I accepted what it was. I think that, but if I had the opportunity, of course, I wish that, my mother raised me.
Okay.
But if my mother had raised me, I wouldn't be as close to my dad. So did I want that my dad raised me? Not really. So to me, it's like I didn't really want it to change. I just wish she was who she was about it.
What I hear in there is that you wanted access to both parents.
Right.
Safely, without being told the terrible stories.
Yes. That's all I wanted. That's all I wanted. That's all I
just
needed.
wanted to be a child with two parents that loved you and that you had access to both of them and you felt their love.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much what most of us children want. Not every situation is as easy to come to that determination. But I think that it's important to realize that it's not just a matter of reuniting and just picking up where you left off. We can't just pick up where we left off because we don't have a space that we can target as this is where we need to pick up from. Because as a small child, you grow out of that childhood with the lessons learned. So there's no going back for us. That's lived experience that we can't reverse. So it's really important for people to understand that when decisions are made for us and we become adults, we often hear in the States that, wait until they're 18 and then you can have a relationship with them. That's nearly impossible. And it's a defeating idea because it's nearly impossible to accomplish that at the age of 18 to just snap and then have a relationship.
Oh yeah.
It just doesn't work.
Can you imagine that if because a lot of the courts, this is what they're saying, go and live with that one parent and then you can pick up with the other one once you're 18 and it'll be okay. You know, it's kind of like, we're questioning that thinking a lot. What do you think about that? Not letting, or not seeing, say, you go live with your mum and grow up until you're 18 and then you can see your dad, or stay with your grandmother till you're 18 and then you can meet your parents. Like, that's the sort of thing.
It's like trying to undo an estrangement. It's how can a child even possibly know what to do with that?
That's so bad. I should have expected those things to happen. It's very bad because at the age of 18, it's irreversible. It's irreversible already.
Yeah.
You can't really reverse that damage. It's just gonna stay there, and it's gonna affect, especially the child. It's gonna affect that child through their 20s and through their 30s and through the rest of their lives. If you know.
Well, like we've said, we can't go back and add in the life experiences that we missed. There's no gaining that ever again. It's completely 100% forever lost. Yeah. So it's definitely, when I can see when the courts are talking to an adult, they're just trying to get through the court case. They're trying to push these cases through the court system, get a resolution, pick the better parent, and then move on.
Yeah.
And that leaves
Pick
us.
the better parent. Pick the better parent is a very interesting way to be deciding who the child goes and stays with, because I think we believe that kids need both parents. As long as
We believe
there's
that too.
nothing illegal going on, then kids need both parents.
We believe that too. However, the court system in the United States, because of the laws that are in place now, the system is set up to choose the better parent and then let, the child will go and live with that. Used to be known as the primary and the secondary parent.
Right.
Now there's custody and legal custody, and then there's joint custody, and there's all these different terms. And basically what it's amounted to is the system says, well, mom or dad is the better parent because, you're the one that did this. Or, this person says that you're like this, so we're just going to side with that person, and then off they go, and then the other parent's subsequently erased.
Yeah.
Or at best, a visitor.
Yeah, that's what happens. And it is really, really sad that they do that, because they're not the ones that suffer.
No.
They're not the ones that suffer.
There's no follow-up or welfare check. I mean, when a child goes through a dependency court where their parents are being put on a parenting plan because of drug abuse or domestic violence, or for whatever that may be, there's support there. They get an attorney, they get all the resources they need, they get the rehabilitation, they get mental health, the children get stipends, and they get to go to schools, they get to play sports, they get to do all these things that they may not have been able to do. But that's not the case in the family court. The family court there is no defense.
Yes.
Someone can make an accusation, and if you get a good attorney, it basically amounts to who's the better attorney, who can prove that one of the parents is a better parent.
Yeah. That's exactly what happened. My grandma's lawyer was really good. My mom's lawyer showed up late.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So that on its own. And also I told my mom, I want to stay in Brazil. I don't want to go. So the mom's like, okay, I'll just do what you want.
Well, and at some point in the States too, they start listening to the child, and they start allowing a child to make that decision, where the child wouldn't be able to make other decisions, such as, where do you go to school, if you can go to school, what doctor you need to go to. Children don't make those kinds of decisions because that's the role of the parent until they're old enough to make those decisions. But we're going to let them make that decision.
Yeah.
How old were they, Dawn, when they were making those really serious decisions? How old?
The judge will listen to them at the age of 12.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
It was the same. It was the same for me in Brazil at the age of 12, but I was too young for that. I was 10. So I wasn't heard, but I heard that at the age of 12, you could already choose.
If you go in and you talk to the
what
judge,
do you think?
I want to live with my mom, the judge will tend to rule with what the child wants, because that's the best interest of the child.
Yeah.
What do you think about that, Caio? Because you grew up in an enmeshed environment with a grandmother, and then if you were 10 or 12, being able to pick which parent you could go and live with, what would your grandmother have been like if you'd actually picked them? And do you feel like you were being swayed to her side?
Yeah.
What was that space?
Or
like
would you have been
you?
afraid to have picked a side?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Picking my mom's side was just so far ahead, so far away from our reality.
Yeah.
You knew better.
I was living with my grandma.
Chose her.
Yeah, I was already living with my grandma, so why would I change anything, right? Especially to go to a different country where I was told that she was only gonna take me because she was gonna get money from the government, all that stuff, Yeah. So why would I do that? So it was just convenient for me to stay.
So she was basically telling you things that most most adults wouldn't talk to a child about. She was telling you some adult type comments
Yeah.
that is really difficult for a child to understand.
Always told me things that she shouldn't have.
Wow.
So do you think a 10 and a 12-year-old is psychologically advanced enough to make those decisions?
I wasn't. I wasn't.
Yeah.
I was 23 to actually understand what was happening. You know, it's sad that they let kids choose, because kids are usually just manipulated, and we act on fear. We act on fear.
Yeah.
Always.
We're impressed.
So whatever is less,
Yeah.
whatever is less bad to our welfare at the moment, like, we just don't want to get beat up. That's all.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
that's important to point out too, is we often seek the safest situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I can imagine if I'd said I want to go live with my dad, what that would have been like when I went home that night, I can tell you. That would not have been good for our lives, I can tell you now.
Yeah.
There's only one answer in that situation, and it's the answer that you're told to have.
Yeah.
Fine where you are.
Better be
Yeah, don't do anything else. Don't dare do anything else. You stick to the script and don't go off it.
Yeah.
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 That's it.
Very, very difficult. Thank you for sharing that with us, because that's important that the courts hear
Oh, yeah.
that from a child who's been through it and was asked to make that decision themselves at that age. It's very, very important. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also want to know, when did you learn about parental alienation, that you're a child of that, and how is that, do you think, going to impact your parents, like your mum and dad, and your relationship the more you know about it?
Honestly, I found out through Googling my cycle depression.
Right.
Cycle depression related to trauma. So obviously, yeah, and obviously, like, I knew there was something. So cycle depression related to trauma. I already knew that I had a trauma because, I've always dated good people for me, right? So now my girlfriend, she's been helping me, get through my stuff. I have my episodes. She goes like, okay, you need resources. And now, we've been dating for a year and a half, 2 years. She's really good about those things. So I realized that something was different in my wiring here, and I was having cycle depression, and then I realized parental alienation syndrome. So then I started telling everyone. I'm like, listen, guys, this is what happened to me, and now I'm starting to get to know what it is, and I told my dad what it is, and my dad understood, and it had a great effect on him. And my mom as well. It had, good effect on her, because she is a big victim. She needs to work through that. Like, it's difficult because we don't have access to resources, right? We don't have access to a psychologist. We don't have access to any of those things.
Do you think that they would watch this video, or would they watch the film A Racing Family? Or
Yes, those things, yes. So right now we actually do have things to hold on to, which is great. But before, it's like, when you don't know, you just don't know. You gotta work your stuff through until you finally. But it doesn't have to be like that, right? It doesn't.
Well, I think what you're talking about right now, and I think Alyse and I had a little glimpse of this, and I think it helps that you can heal together. So the fact that they might, they would watch this, that you guys talked about it, you have these conversations, and you're coming to the realization that you weren't crazy, that, that these things did happen, that it is a thing, and that now you have a name for it. And once you have that discovery, all of a sudden pieces will start falling together, and things will start becoming clearer as far as your connection and that bond again. So hopefully that will take you down that path of healing and really becoming very close to both of your parents again.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I
And
hope
my
so too.
PhD is about the treatment for adult children of parental alienation. So for what that looks like, for what has worked for AKODS like us, what we're looking for, what really, really helps to support us. And some of those things are about treating abandonment, enmeshment. So these are all keywords that you can look for. And it might be for people who don't have access to therapy. Sometimes what some people who do that come to me is they put money away and they access a therapist once a month. So they might all put $20 away, and then that will be enough to get to a therapist once a month at least. So this is what I sometimes do. Mum puts away $20 a week, dad does, the child does.
Really
Then
good.
they come in, and then that way they can hopefully, but they need to find the right one who understands about family systems, trauma, and PA, and has that training as well. It's very, very important that you find someone who specializes in that, so that they can speak to all of those wounds and just the emotional cutoffs and the brainwashing and the cult-like behaviors that you've been exposed to. It's very complex, and that way you can move forward. But that's what my PhD is about. So
That's amazing.
as soon as I finish it, I'll send it to you. And hopefully we'll have a guide, because I'm interviewing adult kids of PA as well as therapists, so we can try and all get some on the same page about what it is that we as adult children want as well with regards to therapy, and what works for us and what doesn't.
Yeah, so we'll be looking for
Stay tuned.
therapists and those people to talk to and to educate. That's what the film is about. That's what, I am also the chair for the National Parents Organization here in Florida. And we're looking at educating not just our congressmen or state senators or anything like that. We really want to educate them, but we also need to educate our mental health professionals, the counselors in the high schools or in the college. We need to educate the educators. We need them to understand this, so that people going through the psychology courses in university right now learn this stuff. So when they get into practice, they're going to be the ones that are helping to prevent this going forward, because they can identify it. So the more that we bring this out and we talk about it, the more that they have the reason to learn.
Yeah. You're right.
Yeah.
So how are you feeling now, Caio, at the end of the interview? How are you feeling?
I feel great. I feel great because it's good to be understood. It's great to be understood. As bad as it sounds, it's great to know that other people out there have been through the same thing as I have. And I really believe in this. I really believe in that we're gonna take this to those healthcare practitioners, and we're gonna take it to the mainstream of information about traumas. We will because it affects far too many people for this to just go like that, and people die with this. They don't even know.
Children and parents alike, they both are very exposed to suicide and early onset of disease, and there's so many things that affect us health-wise and mentally that it is life-altering, and it's dangerous. This is really dangerous for people that have to go through this. But I want you to talk real quick before we end about what you think about advocacy and what you would like to do, or where do you want to participate in that?
I don't know. I think that I just want to be a spokesperson for the whole cause. If I could honestly just get a megaphone and just start shouting, you guys know what this is. You guys gotta know, because honestly, far too many people go through this thing. Now I realize, like, going back to my teenage years or childhood, I realized the kids that I knew their story was similar to mine. And we connected somehow because we felt that. We felt that. And now I realized how we are and how many of us
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
there, right?
Yeah,
So,
and how it's just not talked about either, because you had to go through and find it yourself. And it should really have been picked up and noticed with all of us, but it was never mentioned. And I think there's a figure that I've read that there's about 25 million children in parental alienation in America as we speak. Is that right, Dawn?
25 million parents have been erased from their child's life. And then I've, you know, if you think about that, each household has an average of 2.1 or 2.2 children, right? So times that by 25, you're looking at over 50 million children. And I'm at that quantitative and qualitative. When you can put a number to it, and you're talking to someone about 50 million children are affected by this, and they don't do something about it, that's where the impact is. We've got to start pointing out the pain points. So for an example, in Pennsylvania earlier this year, they had a court hearing, and one of the things that was mentioned by the opposing party was that they were saying that it's too difficult to make a child drive an hour to go see their father. And I'm watching this and I'm thinking, who's speaking for the child? And nobody stood up and spoke for the child. And I'm screaming, or, you know, inside basically, I'm thinking, why is nobody standing up and talking to that child? Because let's put numbers to this. If it took an hour for me to go see my dad and then an hour to come home, that's 2 hours a week. 2 hours times 52. You got 104 hours that I was robbed, or that I might have had to have spent going to see my dad. If I got to spend a weekend with him, that's 48 hours. So let's times that by, you know, but let's multiply these and keep the numbers rolling. And then let's times that by 44 years, because that's how many years that I was kept from him. And now we have a number that is so, I mean, that was 16,060 days. When they start hearing these numbers and if they ignore that, then there's something desperately wrong with the fact that they're okay with this type of trauma happening to children. And the only reason why it numbers up is that that should make an impact on anybody hearing those numbers.
Yes. So when they're saying it's too hard on the child to travel an hour, we're saying, for just what are you talking about? In the big scheme of things, it's nothing. It's better that they travel that and see their parent. That like don't even bring that into the equation. An hour, is what you're saying.
An hour each way,
big
2
deal.
hours, and I missed 16,060 days. I would have gladly have spent that hour in the car.
oh yeah, oh yeah.
So the more get that megaphone out, you know, join us.
Yes.
So our hours sort of up, and we don't want to make it so that you're really, really tired either, Caio, because it's very, very emotionally draining speaking about this stuff. But is there anything that you'd like to add, any message you'd like to give out to any of the kids or alienated parents or alienators watching out there?
Yes. Guys, let's never give up. You know, parents and children, let's never give up. It gets really tough. It could get tougher on some people. It could get, you know, my story is really not the worst one. Your story is not the worst one. You know, everyone that's going through this has something to tell, and that's who we are. We are walking stories, and you know, it's beautiful how we're still here. That on its own is just amazing, how we wake up every day and some of us have the willpower to smile and say it's gonna be a great day. Because honestly, going through this stuff is basically never knowing what it would have been.
That's a very kind spirit for somebody that's been through such trauma.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining us and being here and sharing your story and having the conversation with us. And we hope that we didn't pound you too hard with some of these questions, because we would love to, have you back in the future sometime. We have several platforms that we talk on, so don't be a stranger.
Anytime.
Yeah.
Okay.
For whatever you guys need me.
Thank you.
We
Thank
will
you.
definitely keep in
so
touch.
much.
Let me go ahead and
Yes.
end the recording here.